I'd like to introduce everybody to Dorrie. Dorrie is a Jersey girl and lives in Englewood, New Jersey. Is that northern or southern Jersey?
I'm 10 minutes from George Washington Bridge. So it's
Oh, okay. So Dorrie likes hanging out in New York City for inspiration. Does a lot of wonderful painting. A lot of paintings I've seen of yours are New York City scenes that are really great. You do really complex, difficult paintings involved with a lot of perspective. She's a well-known artist in the New York area and around the world. She's exhibited. She's very prolific, and we really appreciate you, Dorrie, for being with us here today.
thank you. So the first thing I always want to say is that I have a no filter. So sometimes I may say something if hopefully it's funny. If it's not, I'm sorry. So I'm like my background is that I was an advertising art director. And about 10 years ago, I took actually no, 15, 16 years ago, I took a workshop with John Salomon. And during the workshop, the worst thing that happened, he liked my work. Because then all of a sudden you're like very, very nervous. Um, After the workshop gone, I was, still still the advertising art director, and my business wasn't doing it well. I met my husband at the same time. And I got this email that said you were selected for ones to watch. And I said, oh, and I said, and I only took two workshops, and I realized that John Salomon recommended me for this article. So at the same time, I said to my husband, I said, what would you think if I switched from advertising to watercolors? What I was saying to him is that, what would you think if I live off of you? But he didn't hear it that well. And so at that point, I slowly figured it out. Um, I painted watercolor since I was a kid. My mother would give me, my mother would give me watercolors like video games to get me out of trouble. So I've always painted watercolors, but I think like most people, like I've learned design at college, but I think most people that use watercolors, they learn it on the streets. I take workshops and like learn it. And the big secret is the more you paint, the better you get. Um, could we switch to my when I start working, and I'm gonna take it this way. My first step is that I take a lot of photographs. And so like a lot, and for if you're doing 1 point perspective, like usually the view is 5'3". Oh, actually 5'2" now. And I don't do gymnastics, I don't jump on anything like that. And I take a lot of photographs. In a photograph, like because in New York we wear a lot of black, it helps you a lot, but you're never going to get the same amount of people that you want or anything like that. So a lot of times I'll be adding more things to it. In this one, I did a little Photoshop because I wanted the building closer. And just to give me an idea, I usually put a grid on it to help me draw. And I do that in Photoshop. Usually when I do then, like, it's like I'm really the slowest painter in the world. So if I'm going to commit to a watercolor, I want to do a sketch to see if it's worth me painting it. So in this case, and it's interesting because like I've been painting more this summer, so that I've been drawing more and adding more things in that I by hand that I used to do. So like so I decided like if I was going to paint this guy would be more important. And then over here is just for my fun. So to connect it design wise. In here, then I usually do, I think Joseph Sabuki does it. I pronounced his name wrong. Dan Marshall, is that I like to see the light to the darkest and on each page. And like, like knowing like this is T, this is just to give me an idea of where, the grayscale, but also how my paint works. I always start with like a really light T that I slowly work my way up. And then here, I usually like have a page of the colors because like I'm working on 4 or 5, 6 paintings at the same time. So this is to remind me. It's also because like a lot of my paintings are projects for students as well. So I have no memory. So if I don't do this part of it, they ask me what colors that I use all the time, and I don't remember. So I do a lot of that.
So
Then,
is that a watercolor sketchbook
yes,
that you use for a preliminary color comp before you commit to the final art?
yeah, I use the Stillman Burn sketchbook. I use it also if I go out to paint. Um, it's became like a drug to me. It's like best. In fact, I have painted paintings on this, like and literally sold them. The paper's so good.
Mhm.
Um, if you contact the company, they can, I don't know if they still do, they have samples of different papers. I use Zader, and the reason was is that the guy that was the owner of the company once met me for coffee, and he said, "Do you want a sketchbook?" So I looked at the most expensive one, which was Zader, and so then he gave me one, and then it became an addiction. It was really smart on his thing because now I buy 2 or 3 a year.
So is that a 300-pound watercolor paper or
No,
140?
140. And they also have heart and God, I like this. I like the spirals because I like to be able to do this. But they have soft covers. They have all different types and all different sizes.
How do you spell that? Is that Zader?
The company's name,
Yeah, Zader.
uh, the paper is Zeta. The company name is Stillman Burns.
Oh,
Still,
okay. It's interesting to uh, see your sketches where you're already thinking about the color. You're really good colorists. I see you have kind of a family of colors you use a lot in your paintings, like very specific, like ochres and reds and blues and things like that that are very appealing. So when you take a photo in New York City, and it could be generally maybe drab grayish background, are you already thinking about kind of a balance of colors in the painting based on your palette?
well, this is I. You know when you're in college and you're cocky. When I was in college, I knew I had a good sense of color. So whenever they talked about color theory, I felt that like whatever I do is just natural. So whatever colors I pick, um, it's what looks good. Like I'm not very good with the color wheel and the complements and all that. I but so yeah, I think that's where my gift is that I don't have to think about color ever. I I think a lot of people um they think if they buy this certain color that their painting's going to be better. And I used to work for Course, I have all the colors, and I think that like I mix a lot of my colors, like I mix all my greens. I don't have any black on my palette. I only use white if it's at the end. If I don't have my whites here, I'll do anything I can to make a painting work. I've gotten a little bit more mellow that I will sometimes throw a little green in there, but I'll mix it with other colors. Um, but so and like I even have gotten a little bit more flexible that as I've gotten older, I've I've gotten a little bit more flexible that I do try a few new colors.
Mhm.
One thing like I always say, and like what I did is that because of the humidity, and again, because I'm the slowest painter in the world, I threw in my first layer. This is like to me the most important layer of painting because if you get too dark here, you're done. But if you start like I don't do any of the details yet. This is just to connect the shapes together. Um, but and then one of the things that I think a lot of waterists forget is that you have to let it dry. And like today, if I let it dry, we could just it wouldn't go too far. So the next thing I tell my students is always is that, and it's interesting, I was watching a Paul Jackson video right before I started, and look at an artist's palette, okay? Don't, because like what Paul Jackson was painting, he has all this juicy paint on here. And like I think looking at a palette, you can learn more about how a person paints, how much paint they use, than looking at their painting. I use like and again, Michael, it's another thing. I use a very messy palette, so my colors all end up mixing together somehow. But again, going back to what I was saying at the beginning with the light, mediums, and darks. I look my page.
I wanted to mention, Dorrie, that I was looking through your Facebook and your website and all that, and I have to say about your paintings, I really like your pencil drawings. They really have personality. You're not a slave to the photograph. You put a lot of character in there, but I really like seeing your pencil line work in your watercolor. Some people, their pencils are kind of obscured in the watercolor, but I can see yours in there. You use it kind of in the background, and you'll leave some of the pencil. I think that's very appealing character of your watercolors.
It's, I and like okay. Like I was saying before, again, like just to show you this is where the light layer is. Now I'm gonna go darker, but yeah. And the reason, one thing I think one of like the hardest things with watercolors, like they always tell you to do shapes and connect things. This and my pencil helps connect the shapes. Like now going to the brushes I use, I think when you use a brush, you should always use one that scares you. Like use a bigger brush that you want to use. So I'm going to use this one. And again, I'm going to start building up like the next layer a little bit darker. And I don't use greens in my trees.
Is that a Princeton silver squirrel or a synthetic or
I am an educator for silver brushes. So
Mhm.
all my brushes are silver brushes.
Silver? Okay.
These are black velvets, and I knew nothing about brushes, beforehand. And what I like about this brush is that there's a very thin thing on the top, and it holds a lot of paint.
Mhm.
I used to buy brushes that I was attached to from, like I have one brush that like people would give me. Again, you could see now how it's still watery, but you can't see through the thing. And I'm going to go into the tree a little bit now. And then I'm going to use my favorite tool, which is a credit card.
Oh.
And I started using it again because I always am worried about that I wasn't doing enough darks. So with the credit card, I had to use the darks.
That's really interesting. I was going to ask you if you use like a sword brush or a special brush to do your branches on your trees.
No, like I said, it's just this, if anything that forces me to go darker when I need to.
Yeah. Yeah, you're the first watercolorist I've seen that uses this technique for branches.
And like I said, it's basically like, I think, because where I have issues, which I have a lot, is that I was just scared always to go dark. And every painter that I admired, the reason why I admired their paintings is that they're not scared to go into that dark real fast. And like in one shot, I did this painting, which would have been a wonderful painting, and then I was next to an artist's painting that was very, very dark. And it just, my painting was set, it made my painting look very weak. So again, you got to have the darks. This is the part that's fun when you're at somebody else's studio and not your own. Just letting the paint drip. So like having that first layer underneath it helps give it distance in the front.
You said that you don't like using black. How do you mix your darkest colors? What color combinations do you like to make a black, either warm or cool or whatever? What do you
I
like to
I
do?
use ultramarine and burnt sienna, indigo. Sometimes I throw in it a little purple.
Mhm.
But again, being an art director, when you use black, it's very flat. If you choose to use black, or when I mean black, I mean Payne's gray, neutral, anything with a name. You just have to, if I use it, I'll mix other colors with it. It's the same thing like with green. I know when a student tries to use green on on a painting, I know. Because it just says it's not as when you mix your own greens, it just goes with the other colors on the page. Where did I put that? Okay. I put that up like that. A little bit small brusher. I always say like the small brush is like the reward. And again, get it a little bit thicker here. Pretty good. I haven't cursed yet.
That's all
You
right.
like me. I think sometimes when I do a demo, I do a better painting than when I don't, when I work at home by myself, because you can't think as much as when you're at home.
Is your painting board in it propped up right now? Because I see the wash running down.
Yeah, I wanted to, yeah.
Uh,
Another expensive tool I like uses my finger. Skin color, I think, is another thing. Like I'll use a little red, a touch of yellow, a brown, depends what color I want to do. But I try to stay away. Like I have a big commitment. I always test it first of people making yellow skin people.
So do you have your original color comp that you did in your study originally that also had your color blocks that you had your color choice that you had worked out for the palette for this? Or is that nearby as you're working now?
Nearby, but I really, at this point, I do it, and then what that does for me, either I decide to follow it or not. You know, I'm a, so at this point, somewhere along the way, the hand does whatever it wants. So the first part is more or less, it gives me the freedom to know that it's going to work.
So was it 2010 that you decided you really want to commit to being a watercolorist? And
Yeah,
after you were chosen for Artist to Watch by John Salmonen?
yeah. I was really thinking I was retiring.
Mhm.
And like, my husband he was still working at the time. He was saying, "Are you going to buy bonbons?" Then we had to Google to see what bonbons were. And, I think we were talking about it beforehand. I had, being in advertising, I like type, like the people that I love are all um like the old fashioned illustrators from that were on TV guides when I was growing up. So I would one day I was sitting, I had no trouble doing commercial art, like beer, like I at the beginning I started doing beer bottles. And the story always went is that I don't have children, and here's one of those remarks that I may offend people. When you don't have children, babies aren't that much cool for us because we don't want to know what to do with them. And I was at my friend's house who had two twin boys, and she was a widow. She was singing 100 bottles of beer on the wall to her kids because she was tired. And she really wanted me to hold one of them. But again, I didn't have, I didn't want to break them. So in my head, I kept going, wouldn't it be great to do a painting of beer bottles? I could do 100 bottle beer bottles. I go, nah, that wouldn't work. I'll be bored. So I started just painting them in my sketchbook, and I would post them on Facebook, and people wanted to buy them. So then I started putting them on Etsy. And again, like I'm an honest artist to the fact that I would also put them on I would put them on the like beer companies websites.
It's a good idea.
And so then because I wanted them to know that I didn't want them to sue an old lady. So and then they started buying them.
Wow.
So like, Corona has contacted me, and like I would also do commissions of beer bottles. So I'm gonna slowly, I'm doing the second layer here. You can see things are starting to pop out now. In the back, again, I'm just using my drip here. I'm gonna throw in some of these people. And where I threw in the people, again, being that are areas that I didn't want to paint, so I put a little person in front of. So when I don't know what something is, I just do these little gestures of people. If you notice with the people, I don't put their head, I don't put designer labels on the things in the back, because they're just gestures of people. In fact, like I said, the things in the back that I do, they're really for my entertainment versus like other people, because I think when people look at the things in the back of my paintings, they look at it and go, what is wrong with her? Because like they don't really add anything to the painting, but they're my fun.
So what type of watercolor paints do you like using?
Um, I like using cores. I have a lot of them. I also like I won some Holbeins and I found them really creamy and nice.
Mhm. And I noticed that you're standing as you're painting. Do you usually stand when you paint?
Um, depends how tired I am. I paint faster when I stand, and like I usually spend a lot of time looking at my paintings, like deciding what's next, what I want to do next. But I have a drawing table in the back. Sometimes I'm going back and forth, um, deciding what I should do next.
I think you're very, very brave as a painter. Your painting, some of your paintings are very complex with the perspective. Your perspective is really, really excellent. And so do you work out the perspective on your studies first and then like transfer it through a light table or tracing paper, or do you do all of your actual drawing on the final watercolor paper
Um,
directly?
using, okay, sometimes I trace nowadays because I'm teaching too much, but that's what the grid is for.
Right.
You know, like it depends, you know, I've been doing perspective type of drawings since I was a kid. Again, explains a lot about my personality, but if you look at like a photograph like this, right? If you're taking it at a 5'3", okay, two in person, you could look at the street. It's very easy to find the perspective because I always look at the photograph first and I just go like that and it's there.
Yeah. And you can
Very
work off
quick.
your vanishing point.
Right. I do it backwards.
Mhm. Well, you do it well because it's not easy. It's very intimidating for a lot of artists, especially if they get into two D perspective or 3D perspective. It gets really or 3-point perspective, whatever it's called. Gets
I
very
get,
complicated.
I think a
Three
lot,
point.
and I think a lot of it when it becomes easy, I was doing it since I was a kid, so nobody told me it was hard. You know, that I think that's part part of my luck. Waiting for this to dry, I'll put another layer. When I do my cars, one of the tricks I learned, and again, because of the time element, I'm going all over the place because I you know I want to try to get as much as I can for you guys to see. Because if I was painting this without you guys here, and it's the reason why I love when I do these demos because I paint at a realistic speed.
As an art director, did you do a lot of like font choices and work with text and fonts a lot?
I even did it before there were computers, so I had to count. Yes,
Yeah,
that was my specialty.
yeah.
I designed art copywriters used to like to work with me because I would make their type as big as possible. But like what I did the best is logos and like brochures, ads. But
It's so much easier doing logos today with Photoshop or Illustrator. Back in the day when I remember taking courses, we used ruling pens and like gouache paint or placa and did
yeah,
everything by hand. It was a totally different process.
yeah, when I started as an art director, when I was in college, that's how my professor cut the program down. He made us use a ruling pen. It changed it definitely computers like I think when computers started, my mother went to me, um, because the owner of our company thought it was a passing phase. And my mother went to me, you're gonna have to buy a computer and you're gonna have to learn this. Because my company wasn't.
I think Photoshop's really a great tool for editing and composing paintings and scenes. It's great.
It is, I used to teach Photoshop. Throw this in. That tree's gonna get more scary dark, so I could get away with doing that. Again, I'm looking for connections. I'll throw some pink in here now. I never use, again, another thing, like I never use just brown for the hair. That looks fake to me. Get him a little darker faster than I normally do.
He's on the list twice. Rather impressive going into the top of the list this season. Oh. Yeah, that's a fuckable list.
So did you work with TV Guide back in the day?
I was a little too young.
Okay.
I would, when I was growing up, I was about I like 8 or 9, and the TV Guide would come and I would be there saving all the covers, like Bernie Fuse, and they made money back then doing those illustrations, not like today. They were celebrities.
Yeah, I used to love Richard Amsel's work.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic. He was so influential.
I found something when I was in college that I didn't know I did, that we went to because we weren't illustrators, we were graphic design majors, but some reason or other, we went to we met all the famous, we went to a thing in New York City, and I went to school in Delaware, where all the famous it was like all the famous illustrators, like I met them all. And I sent this thing out to my college friends, do you remember going here? They go, no, we don't remember doing this. And then we all did it.
Yeah. Is
We,
that the Society of Illustrators?
this was like a workshop for it.
Oh, okay.
I've been there too when I was younger and all that. My college professor, like he went to me, he goes, because back when I was in college in the late 70s, and at that point, being an illustrator, you really had to be something, because there weren't that many jobs. And he said, Dorrie, you could be an illustrator, but you'll be doing like clip art, and I said, or you could be an art director and like be people's, because get a job. And also I never wanted to really to work alone. I wanted to be with people. So, but I always knew I wanted commercial. It is kind of shocking for myself now that I do something like this, because it really wasn't in my radar.
So when did you start exhibiting your work and joining societies? When did you really what how kind of where was your head at when you started showing your work and all that?
Um, I basically I think it was in the about 2000-ish time. And it's basically because I found the less I think and evaluate things, I would never do anything. And I was looking at a Jewish standard, and I guess you guys have caught on that I'm Jewish. So they had this thing that said looking for Jewish artists, and I had no idea what that meant for an art show at Washington Y. And I figured that I was Jewish, so I thought I had a good thing, and I have painting, and then I paint, so I think, hey, I'm a Jewish artist, let's do this.
Yeah.
And my cousin contacted me because she was part of the committee that chooses them. And she said to me, she goes, Dorrie, don't get upset if they don't choose you. And I said, well, the reality of the situation is that I have no long-term memory, so I'm not going to remember applying. And I didn't know how any of the things worked back then. I just applied. And she had to call me in like in a few days, groveling to say, you got chosen. Anonymously. I thought she was gonna say everybody but me. But so you know, it was, you know, things like that, just stupid luck.
I think it was probably like skill. I think all of us kind of justify why, or can we be accepted into an organization like that? And then once you are, it really makes you kind of look back and regret, why didn't I do this earlier? Because we all have excuses not to do things. So it's a compliment to be chosen by other artists to be in a show.
Exactly. I did it one show, and you know, again, my mother, like I think most I lost my mother early, but my mother was, you know, no regrets who my mother was. Even, you know, good or bad and everything. But she like always took me for art classes, you know, when I was a kid, saying to me, you're gonna be an accountant, like, you know, like every mother. And so she would go to the art center and she would look at these artists and say that they think they're so good. And my mother was extraordinarily a good artist, but she would never enter a show. So I entered a show there about a few years after she passed away. And I walk, you know, and I would walk around. These ladies were all nice to me, and I got first place in the show. And I would say, "Do you know my mommy?" They go, "Yes." They go, "We love your mother." And like, so my mother was just so intimidated by these people for some reason, and she just never would enter a show.
So did you experience kind of like a Sally Fields moment when you were finally accepted? They like me, they really like me.
I was, the Sally Field moment was not that they liked me, that they liked my mother.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and I wish she was alive to know, because even like even the joke was in so many ways, somebody bought one of her paintings in a garage sale, and I posted it on Facebook. And my mother's paintings get more likes than mine.
Oh, wow.
You know, and she just didn't think she could do it. And you know, I don't know if she, you know, like what, but you know, that was that generation.
Well, I'm sure your mom would be proud of you now if she's seen the type of work you do.
Ah, you know, I'm a little spiritual. I think she does. And then she says to me, "You don't match today. What's wrong with you?" So I use purple as my shadow color. And again, I think a lot of people get, when they do shadows, they think they have to use a darker color of what's there. Get the time up, not yet.
Do you use a hair dryer when you paint at all?
Um, no, that's when I get a Diet Coke or I go to another painting. I do whatever I can to slow my brain down.
So do you have a couple paintings going at the same time, usually, or?
Um, not, I, somewhere along I have about 7 or 8 paintings. Like an average day to me would be not only painting, like I'm doing the project, like for what my students, those type of paintings. So I'm like usually painting about 5 or 6 paintings. Sometimes a painting like see, something like this. When it's this size, this would take me about a year because I'm painting 3 or 4 other paintings at the same time.
Wow. I saw a painting that you did. I don't know if it was in American Watercolor Society or someplace that you did of it was kind of looking up at a subway overpass down in New York City. Kind of had that French Connection look to it. That was a really complicated piece. Love that piece. Love that piece.
Not sure which one that was.
Yeah, it was very dark. It was kind of looking up, and you could see underneath the tracks. It was at a corner, and they were like kind of the post coming down. It was a real kind of busy, dark scene.
I I I don't know which one that was. If
Okay.
I've never been in the American Watercolor Society.
Oh, okay. I saw it in some maybe I saw it in a magazine or someplace, but I recall something that you did.
Oh, was it? Yeah, I was on the cover of Watercolor magazine.
Right.
That might have been Highlands.
Oh, okay.
And again, like when you're very lucky, and if you're in, like for me, like if I'm in New York and I'm gonna take a bigger brush now, and I'm lucky enough to have a view that I look down, because again, I don't do too much gymnastics anymore. So it's slowly coming together. I'm gonna throw in some, no, I can't throw that in yet. Yeah, I'm gonna. Sometimes I would spray some water on it, but I'm not gonna do that here because we would get nowhere. But you see, like I'm starting to get the second phase of the, like you starting to see a dimension. And like, that type of thing I just started more to learn how to do the last few years. If I'm lucky, I'm always growing up and changing and learning. I'm gonna just throw some.
That painting you did, Dory, of a white church in a landscape. It's kind of the driveway going or a walkway
Yeah,
going up to the church. Was that a plein air piece?
no.
Okay.
If I did a plein air piece, that was plein air is something like if you have, like if it's something that complicated, it's very hard to do plein air because
Yeah.
first of all, forget the fact that people won't stand still for you for 3 years. Um,
Okay.
Reality of the situation is that not only won't they say like that for you, you got to understand that the city doesn't want you standing in that place for that long. Throwing it a little bit more. So you can't really, if you do plein air of, in the city, for instance, you have to be in a park. They're not gonna let you stand in the middle of 42nd Street and paint.
Right. Are most of your photos done with like a regular digital camera or iPhone?
iPhone nowadays.
Mhm.
And then like if I have to alter it, Photoshop.
All right.
And there was, to be honest with you, very, when I used to take, I do at times, if I have the time, if I'm taking a shot for New York, I may take about 20 of the same place. So, like, because people don't stand where you want to. But there are always of my own photos. I mean, for when I enter shows, when I teach, that I might use, I don't like using, when I do Mickey Mouse, obviously those things are not my own photos. I'm a big believer that you do better paintings when you use your own photos because it's your life. A little bit red in cheeks here. Again, not too much detail in the face because a little bit more detail over here. One thing I really do badly of is that I forget that I'm a righty and I smear over things a lot.
Yeah. So what's your routine painting? What type of schedule do you keep as a painter? Do you try to paint every day or you have certain time slots or how's it
Um,
work with you?
Lately, my day goes, I get up around which 6:30-ish. I paint for about a half an hour. I go to play pickleball for 2 hours, which then I come home and I paint a little bit, like I paint on and off. I, I would say I never, the, like I said, like, I would love to paint more. I think that's every artist will tell it that I know. They'll say their paperwork gets in the middle of what they want to do. Because I don't think there's any more fun that I have than painting. It's the only time my brain goes dead. But then gotta do the website. And you gotta go out and have a life, because the more you go out and have a life, the more you paint. And again, like I was talking to someone, I said, I'm thinking I want to retire from teaching. And like they said, like, because like we don't retire.
Yeah.
Try to get this a little bit darker. Now, if you notice here, like this is the first layer. I mean, it's got to get much, much darker. before, I leave the line work to last. Over here, we could put a little red stripes in here, but I put my shadows underneath it. And then sometimes I just explore to see what happens when I put this color on. A little. Then when I do that, I have to put it somewhere else. And again, not the smartest thing to do this side. I'm gonna go into the tree now because I'm just looking at the time. Nah, yeah, I'm gonna go into the tree now. To keep this, to get this like, I have the light green in the background, but I want that tree to be really, really most dominant thing. So again, taking this here. And I think another thing is that I will mix until I get the color I want. But if you notice here, there's a lot of paint here.
Dory, when you're done with that part, maybe you could show the upper part where the top part of the painting's cut off in the view. Is wondering, there we go. Oh, thank you.
I don't know, again, like I probably have to go for another layer of this because it's. The more I feel comfortable, the looser I get.
I like the calligraphic quality of your brushstrokes. They're very nice.
Thank
Has a
you.
playful quality to it.
Like I took COVID, I wouldn't do a tree. Because it's, again, that's another part that's more fun. Going back to the credit card. In fact, like, I love gift cards because I love credit. I don't even like to use them. I just like, being able to cut them up.
Yeah, I've never seen anybody drawing with a credit card. It's a pretty cool technique.
I could be honest with you. I was once doing, like I said, Silver Brushes are wonderful company. Company to work for. They asked us, and they teach you also. So it's really nothing bad to say about them. So one day we all were taking turns doing demos. I took out my credit card, which they weren't, that wasn't one of the brighter things that I did. They're like wanting you to buy brushes. Again, like I always work for what I, about this tree, and I tell you, I was really excited about painting it for a long time. I couldn't wait. But and I probably will have to paint another layer to it because I need to make this tree darker too. Mhm. The reason why I love watercolors versus anything else is that if you get it on your clothes or your hands, take it off so easily. I think it's pretty good. I must be moving around more than I think because my watch just said that I'm working out. You could make some just people here.
You mentioned earlier that later on in the painting, if you need it, you'll use white. Do you use like a Chinese white or a gouache or
Wash
uh-huh.
or gesso.
Yeah. I like this painting that you did of I think it was at the Schubert Theater. You had a lot of signs in that and a lot of color. I love that painting.
Oh, thank you.
And you did all that Schubert and some of the signs with the gouache then.
Actually, I might have painted around it.
Okay,
I have a very steady hand.
great.
As my seniors always say, for now.
I really like how you have the reds and oranges and blues bouncing around in that painting. Very nice.
Again, it's here a little bit darker. Yeah, like I have no idea how this looks like because I'm just going for the deadline.
So far, so good.
What these people are for, like they connect everything. Another, I think a lot of times if people are like me, like, a lot of times you take workshop and they say connect the shapes, and they say it's very easy. And I think that's a gift that I didn't get as being easy. It took me, some people just do it so naturally and just do it so wonderfully. I think I'm still learning how to do things. There's a bug on my painting and I'm handling it very well. If it was a bee, there would be a lot of curses coming out of my mouth right now. We were at the pool a few days ago. There was a bee on my husband. I think he wanted me to do something and I wouldn't. Because he's allergic and I think I'm allergic. So like I just stood there and said, either me or him, it's gonna be him. And he kind of knows that I'm not. Going darker places. I'm also a big fan of watermarks. Somebody once asked me, how many layers do you do? And they didn't like my answer. I said 325.
That might be a record.
Yeah, if it's kind of like asking me my weight, if you have to ask, not good.
I like the feeling you get with all of the people in your paintings. Really adds kind of to the narrative, to the character of a busy city. It makes it very interesting. We had another artist do a demo about a year or so ago, Tim Satternow, and he does great city scenes also, but he never has people in his paintings. So his focus is a little bit different. So it's really interesting, the contrast, seeing really busy city scene in comparison with a quiet one.
He's one of my idols. He does such wonderful stuff.
Great guy.
It took me a while to do people. Again, it goes into my psychological problems.
Mm.
I think there are artists that paint people really well, and it's because they like people. Um, and they, you have to talk to them. When I started painting, 'cause I don't like people. And when I started painting people in my paintings, at first, New York, at first I would look for scenes that had no people in it. Then I would look for them only when they had the back of the people. It took me years before I got somewhat okay with like staring at people. And again, in New York, nobody really cares except I mean, I did have a homeless person that I was taking a lot of photos of start walking up to me, where I realized that you really got to stay a little bit distant when you take people's pictures. But again, most of these people, they're not in the photo. They're. But they also, they cover all your mistakes, and that's really what my life's about. Make a good gray, again, like you just have a messy palette, that's the best gray you can make. Exactly. I used to splatter my paintings more, but with people I don't. I had a commission a while ago and it was for a policeman and his wife said, please, no red splatters. I realized kind of made me stop splattering. You good? Haven't cursed yet?
Nursing is good.
Wanted me to teach a class with kids and I said to them, I don't think it's a really good idea. And they're like, well, they know all the curses. I go, yeah, but I go, their parents know they know all the curses, but I don't think the parents want me to be I'm more scared of the parents yelling at me than them. Well, that's another pet peeve of mine, because as much as I'm glad with all technology, I don't see in my classes, I'm still one of the youngest people there. That bothers me. 'Cause I think people take, not as many people are going into doing painting and things like that, that it used to be. Back here, it's not that important. I'm gonna keep it really light. If we had another 30 hours, I probably would put more detail on here. But again, all this detail in the background, it's really from my entertainment, not yours. It's fine. Yellow, blue, mixing greens. Yeah, I'm gonna throw some green in his skin now. It's a great shadow color. Let me see, what should I mix? This is a little bit dark. I'm making a mess here, but hey. That if I was doing this at home, well, I am doing this at home. One of my students said to me, when you paint in front of people, you paint so much looser than when you paint at home. Okay, you see how if you go back to the thing, as I'm looking at the time, as I'm gonna be painting another layer on top of here on the tree. But as I'm looking at the time, as we get closer to the end, the paint gets thicker and thicker. You get also, I will go back in this and get more of the details in later.
Yeah, tree really jumps forward now that with that contrast. Really creates that atmospheric perspective on the left there. Love how the cars are very soft and diffused back there.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I've been working on in the last few years, is like, you don't have to paint everything in detail.
I try to convince myself of that all the time.
No, it's hard. You know, I find myself struggling with that all the time. I call it the honest plea. As if you think if somebody's gonna be looking at your painting and saying, why did you paint that? And honestly, I did have one guy say to me, he bought a painting of mine and said, you moved something around. And he wanted a refund because of that.
Oh, wow.
And I looked at him, it was also, like, I really felt like I said to him, you really got to get a life.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think that's an appropriate time to use a curse word.
I did get a little nasty. I sent him an email back with all my initials from all my art societies that I belong to. So then he said, that's okay, I'm not taking your money back. And he showed me that he ripped it in half.
Oh, what a jerk.
And, you know, so I don't really sell paintings for $2 anymore on eBay. I realize that I'd rather throw them away or give them to charity. And you can see where it starts popping out is when I start getting those darks in there.
I think painting really dark is challenging for most artists, and I think that the benefit of you realize once you get into doing darks is how much more vivid your colors become with that contrast in comparison with like a middle tone.
That's why this is so important, because when you start feeling it, and you do the light, medium, and dark thing, and you feel how dark you could go. Because really, nobody could tell you. It's more or less when you see it, and I think, or I guess I will mention, or you have a painting next to my good friend Lanners, who does darks no better than anybody I know, is that then you understand. Like, just put your painting next to an oil painter and you'll see the importance of it. And it's hard.
It was a local artist who he passed a number of years ago. His name was Ray Hendershot, really great watercolorist, and he used to put matte medium in his darkest, his blacks and his dark browns, and he would actually paint his darkest darks first with the medium, and so it would dry. It's not soluble anymore, and then he would do his painting over that in his washes. A real interesting way to do things, but he got a lot of drama in his work because he was so dark in the beginning, but it was a different way to work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when I started teaching, I would make people do a dark and light at the beginning of a painting, so they know where they had to go.
Do you normally do a color comp or color study before you get into it, jump into a painting?
Not always a color. Sometimes I'll do a black and white study,
Mhm.
but I always do a study just again because I'm so slow. I may never look at it again, but it's to me, is this subject really exciting? Do I really want to paint this subject? And I mean, that's really the reason why I do it. You could see I haven't really looked at it, but especially if I'm teaching, I do it more so because if I don't have notes, then I'll go south. So, it keeps me honest. I've been told by some people, which this also always has worried me, is that when I die, they want my sketchbooks. So they ask me for my sketchbook. What really concerns me, the people that have said this are younger than me. So like, I don't know if they know something that I don't know. But, there is something that's so exciting about a sketchbook that that I sometimes lose in my paintings.
I think it's so informative to see, kind of what when you're laying out what your color palette is. And I recall a drawing that you did of a barn or something. I don't know if it was plein air or not, but you did it in three different perspectives, excuse me. And so you can kind of see the thought process before you get into a final painting. And it's really informative, I think, to younger artists.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, like I said, I am not a plein air artist. I don't pretend to be one. I wish I was. Because I think you do the most learning when it comes to painting there's nothing like painting in life from life. And I don't think, that's what happens when you do plein air. But I think my barn ones, because I was asked recently to teach a plein air um thing, and like I was praying for rain that day because they were going to do it anyhow, and I said I could teach indoor. Like, I do teach my classes once a year. We go outside to paint. So I Googled on Facebook, I Googled to find buildings that were out there, so I kind of knew what I was doing. So when I went out there, I wouldn't, and it turned out to be a really, very talented artist, which also helps. But really great day. Again, they laughed at my jokes, which is really all I ask for.
That's great. We have a really great plein air group here at Philadelphia Watercolor Society, and we've gone to some really interesting places, and it's so much fun. I think you really get a feel for kind of light, and like you said early on, if you get into a piece or a scene that's so complicated, you spend all your time doing the drawing before you get into the painting. And some people are really good at using the painting as drawing as they go, and they can get into the painting quicker.
And I'm always envious of plein air artists because they look like the coolest people in the world. They're all like friends.
Yeah.
And they all hang out together. When they do those like weekends, I look there and I want to be one of them, but in fact, I went many years ago, I went up plein airing with um Sarah Yeaman asked me. So I'm sitting down to paint plein air. By the time I'm sitting down, she has 3 paintings done. Yeah. It's, I got my ruler out there and looking for the buildings. And that's before I knew how to do trees.
Exactly.
So you roll the stop sign now in the half ramp, because plus we can change that the bike to go out.
I'm not taking that chance. A little bit more on the front here.
We're supposed to go to the ride.
This is to scare people.
Thank you. I have a copy of Isabel. Thank you. I could have done without it.
So Dory, as a judge of selection or judge of awards, what type of things do you appreciate or look for in a painting when you're looking at hundreds and hundreds of pieces? It's a challenge.
Uniqueness. I don't like seeing like, I think in general, something that's a different view,
Very much.
something that takes guts or chutzpah.
Unintended consequences.
Because there's so many talented artists out there. How do you stand out? So something that's like, that I've never seen before. I like, I mean, I think a lot of people
And the most powerful state on.
like try to stay away from things that look like somebody else's. Like a lot of times, like, I would go to shows and I would see, and it was the Mel Stabens, and they all look like paintings that Mel Staben did. So I think that's uniqueness is something I look for.
I live in San Francisco and I absolutely love what you've done to help the schools there. Like the Alice Waters project.
Boldness in colors.
Is that something that your foundation could expand, as in that?
And that comes first, obviously it has to be designed well, technically oriented and all that, the basic stuff.
I'm full of surprises. You are my daughter. That's not political pond to be exploited. I don't believe that.
I do think that,
Ever helps you get elected, and so be it. My decision.
to me, one of the hardest jobs to do is to judge a show.
Deal with anything. Why not? We're talking about. Is that next district attorney in Los Angeles?
With this, I liked getting the shadows, like things connecting, but, where I'm cautious, 'cause I really want to put some darks here, but I'm like, well, it looks like I did it. Because of the humidity, I didn't want to do it till later, but hey.
Was that sad story off? She only thought it was stuck. I know. Tell me about the meeting. Those cameras people reached out on for extra security of horizon, so that had to be discussed and supervised. Well, some people thought that, the department was being played by Chandler. What? Oh, you know, was a scam to make it look like LAPD was supporting her. Letter we got. What letter? The threatening one. On the back of a flyer for Chandler's Revenge. Yeah. Lauren was told to let Hollenbeck deal with Chandler's request. Where the hell was Holland? And and no. You're right. Okay.
So I drink too much Diet Coke. There's many times in my paintings, I drink cans now when I do demos. Because there has been many a times that I have had put my paintbrush in my Diet Coke.
This is the person we're looking for. Jack the Frog, that's a love fest like please. Stevie does now.
Hi, Philippe. Hey, you guys know that. Those prison calls are recorded. You're just trying to trip me up. See if I lie.
Too late. I'm scared to burn out.
You haven't screwed it up yet.
The whole probation goes to go away. Nothing's like hell, just get your brain. I'm sure you know him, they got quite a bit lost.
When I'm done, is there somewhere I could give it to you to post? I think it does not look as good because of the going in and out. Or you guys could come to I will post it on my Facebook page if you want.
Well, that'd be great.
Talk to my attorney.
See that?
It's really interesting that one figure you have up on the steps there, he's like the only figure that looks like he's checking you out. All the rest of people are doing what they want, moving on.
He was the last one I figured of putting in too, because, I didn't want to, again, like I put the people in when I can't figure out what's there. I add more people. Buildings, I'm just gonna. And again, like a little secret with perspective is that what's in front is always going to be bigger than what goes in the back. Except like if I'm standing next to somebody 6'5", that's a whole nother story. But in general, unless you're doing 2-point perspective, everybody's going to be bigger in front and smaller in the back. For me, it's also just patience with 1-point perspective. But again, like when I was a kid, I would be in my room, just sitting there drawing drawing my room in 2-point perspective. This was something I found very fun to do.
And many people, I think, really are challenged by understanding perspective.
I get that, yeah. Like again, I think because a lot of people go to me, watercolors are so hard, and I look at it as like it's really great. I could do this in an upstairs studio and not worry about getting too messy. So to me, I don't understand it, and it's also so if you screw up a painting, you throw it away, and it's not that much of a commitment. But I was doing it since I was 4 years old, so I have a little different non-attachment to it. Now doing it in front of people, that's a little different. Again, like I like coloring the boxes, but I don't think it does much to add anything to it. Tell me when you want me to stop, because I could go on all day long.
Yeah, I don't know how that's gonna help you with the department or with the other issues. Good luck.
Yeah, I'm still getting darker. And over here, it's still wet, so I gotta work a little bit on that.
Jimmy, surprise. Steve's morning.
So tell me what.
A call came through on your cell, said lost on state prison, so I answered. It was words.
What was your reaction?
Stunned, at a loss, confused.
He told your father, right?
I did. He said he had nothing to do with it. It's just orders like his strength.
Where's this scene take place?
I think it's 14th Street. My dentist used to be there.
Trees.
What do you report phone call?
And I took it about 5 years ago. I have painted it before, and one thing I'm always curious because my style has changed over the years. I like painting the same scene over again. One of the things that really freed me up, like Charles Reed, I was reading his book, and he was saying in his demos, nothing ever, he can never paint anything the same way twice. And I was always trying to do that. And I realized if Charles Reed can't paint everything the same twice, what am I doing? So I like to, take a seat, especially like now when I'm teaching. It's so interesting to me to see if I could paint the same scene 3 times and only one of them would be a good painting, but I've learned something in all of them. Okay, you can see now, even like when I start putting the darks in, the painting changed completely. And again, I'm painting with a lot of water, so it gets lighter. A little pink in that smart looks like he's. Go for the really, really small brush now. I guess 90% of my paintings are done with round brushes. I do my hard edges with. But I always tell my students the small brush is the reward. Because that's the most fun, is to do that little detail. I also have no problem going back in there with the pencil if I don't like something. And here, 100% paint some places.
Welcome to the conversation. Power for a long days, with a convenient, low sugar, brain body nutrition. IQ bars, protein bars, and hydration mixes deliver just that.
We craft a salted caramel chip bar and Yuzu mango hydration mix to fuel our bodies and minds. With this partnership, 10% of the proceeds will be donated to Mental, a nonprofit organization devoted to influencing culinary excellence in young chefs. Thank you.
Next time, boss legacy, that's good. Percentage of his weapons. What you rush to, say, yeah. You're here all about it. Then he has a story to tell. That's from this one. Okay, I say, no, why, and not, why.
Yeah, flyers.
This one was the most beautiful.
Put some orange in some places.
So Dory, do you take liberties with color of things in the scene, like the buildings, for example, as they're going down in perspective? Do you vary the colors, or do you try to keep really true to what you see on the in the photo?
Okay,
Like, will you change like a gray facade to an orange or ochre or whatever?
yeah, I would at times. It's a, I would do whatever I have to do to make a good painting. Like I switch this in the background. I gotta throw in a few more things over here again. But in general, yeah.
So Dory, do you take liberties with color of things in the scene, like the buildings, for example, as they're going down in perspective? Do you vary the colors, or do you try to keep really true to what you see on the in the photo?
Okay,
Like, will you change like a gray facade to an orange or ochre or whatever?
yeah, I would at times. It's a, I would do whatever I have to do to make a good painting. Like I switch this in the background. I gotta throw in a few more things over here again. But in general, yeah, just whatever it takes.
Mhm.
If it's like none of these people were here, this tree wasn't here. But again, like I knew I just loved having this big tree in the front. I thought that added so much to it.
Yep.
I'm gonna have to fix this, get this darker again.
Mhm.
Just a little line work. That's pretty much all that's needed. Here I did a little bit darker in the back. Actually, no, I'll probably leave in the back.
Well, it looks really great so far. Really, I like the real kind of subtle movement you captured in the figures. Or it looks like there's a nice motion and a natural quality instead of stiff figures standing there. They have some kind of movement and character to it. It looks really, really good.
Nervous energy, but I mean, when I started here, like I knew, I've done a few of these things, and I always give myself permission not to finish because no matter how my brain works to simplify it, my brain is going to get it more complicated. And like here, I realized like what I wanted to make sure I got done were the people and the cars. Because I felt, and the tree, because I felt that like I can almost say this painting is finished just by doing that. And that, so that was my goal. Like I said, like, because again, like one of the beauties from doing a demo in front of people, you have a deadline, and that makes you know you can't sit there and color in every leaf, and God knows I would try, or go in the back here and, do every window. Um, and that, like, I'll go back and now, like tonight or next day, and throw in a little bit more of the detail that I want to throw in. But, I think it's enough that you understand that I got issues, I guess, because I throw in too much detail or whatever. You know,
Well, you did a great job. We really appreciate your demo, Dory. It looks really nice. We're looking forward to seeing how your piece finishes, and we're looking forward to seeing what your choices are for the international show. I was in touch with, and just really want to thank you for your time and showing us your process and your jokes and everything else. It was really a pleasure to have you today, Dory. Really
no,
great.
to me, it's always an honor, because, like, first of all, like I've gotten rejected to Philadelphia Watercolor Society shows. I've gotten
Oh,
in, I've gotten rejected. So to be asked from there is quite an honor to me,
great.
because it's really some wonderful, wonderful painters.
Well, thank you, and we feel the same about you, and want to wish you inspiration and a great year coming forward with your own work.
Thank you. Same to you guys.